Good morning, friends and fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the morning market prep video for January 9th, 2024. Well, yesterday we had quite the reversal on the day with the Dow reversing over 400 points from the morning low. And now this morning we're looking at maybe just a little bit of bearishness again. So possibly whipsawing again this morning. Let's take a look at what happened overnight. First off, we had Asian markets mostly higher last night, but with a very light price action overall, except in the Nikkei. The Nikkei made a 33-year high yesterday, while Korea and Hong Kong continued to be a little bit lower. If we take a look at Europe this morning, Europe is lower at this moment across the board, feeling a little bit of negative pressure here this morning, but I would have to say it's not tremendously bearish just yet, just a little bit on the bearish side, a little bit of modest trading going on there. Here in the U.S., we are down across the board, trying to reverse a little bit of yesterday's move here in the pre-market, it looks like. And another interesting thing is we had oil moving sharply lower yesterday, and oil is reversing to the upside this morning. So quite a little bit of back and forth. We also have bond yields going just a little bit higher here this morning, so we'll want to be keeping an eye on that as well. So what does all this mean? Well, how about we settle in, let's buckle up, let's get ready for the Tuesday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate it. Let's try to shake off a little bit of our bias. Let's take a look at these charts and see if we can try and gain some information about how we might want to approach the market for today. Well, let's take a look here. As you can see, just a big reversal here on the diamonds yesterday. I mean, almost immediately after the open, we started buying in the diamonds, pushing up. Didn't seem to care much about what was going on there in Boeing all that much, and started to ignore that pretty early, and even had Boeing for a while rallying to the upside. So let's take a look here. We've got a resistance level in the chart, and right now the way that this chart is looking, there's every reason to believe that we could move right on through, hit a new high here in the diamonds if they can continue to push that chart. Notice that we held this price support in here and just absolutely rejected any idea of selling here in the diamonds, pushing right on up, nice bullish engulfing candle. So if the bulls can continue to find that inspiration here today, well then let's watch for that opportunity that we could push on through to the upside. However, if the bears continue on with the way they're starting the morning, if they find a reason to push back down, then let's watch that carefully right in here. Maybe a pushback to retest that low yesterday and whipsaw this market might be a possibility. Remember, I mentioned yesterday that possibility we could end up range bound in the market because we're waiting on a CPI number, we're waiting on the beginning of the big bank earnings, with a few of them starting on Friday. So a lot of uncertainty here toward the end of the week. We'll want to be watching that closely. So just kind of keep a close eye on that. So if we were to break through up here, remember we've got blue sky above. If we were to break down below this price support, then I would suggest that possibility we could come on back here and we could test that all-time high breakout here in the diamonds that occurred from all the way back there in 2021, 2022. So watch that carefully here. If we take a look at our SPY, SPY had a really good day as well, just zoomed back to the upside. Big tech was surging yesterday, and that helped a bunch. And I mentioned this yesterday, that if there was any kind of a chance for the SPY to break out and make that new record high, we're still waiting on that here in the SPY, then they were going to need big tech to surge. And my goodness, did they ever. As a matter of fact, NVIDIA just ripped the top off yesterday, going to the upside. So watch this carefully in here. If the bulls can continue to find that inspiration, then first thing we would look up here is see if we could test that resistance up here in the chart. And if they can push that on through and break that out, we've got all-time highs in the SPY. So blue sky above that area in the SPY. However, if those bears were to continue this little bit of a push here this morning, let's take a look in here. This is a level right across here. As you can see, I'll pull this back once again. And this level is created by all these little tops over here between 2021 and 2022. So if those bears were to continue to push down here this morning, then watch for that possibility of a test of that support area here in the chart. And if that doesn't hold, then I would look for a full-on potential whipsaw where we would push this back down and maybe test this level down in here. So watch that closely. Now, one thing you want to pay attention to in the SPY, if that were the case, that could create a little bit of a lower high situation in the market, and that could be a complication for us here if we find some resistance in that area and start pushing back lower. So watch that closely. If we take a look at our QQQ just zoomed yesterday with those big tech rally going on. But unfortunately, we just rallied back into a price resistance level here in the chart. And if I pull this back, once again, I'll show you over here, right in here along those all-time highs up here. We're close. We find a little tiny bit of resistance, and we ran into that yesterday and just closed really strong, surging really into the close. And we did it on relatively low volume in the SPY, the QQQ, and IWM. Now, that being said, running into that resistance also creates that little bit of a problem. You can see we got some selling coming in here this morning. Maybe we're just relieving a little bit of that uber bullishness yesterday. But what if this were to turn into a lower high? We'll want to watch carefully for that. Now, if the bulls can continue to push on through, then there would be every reason to believe that if they can push through here, that we're going to go ahead and we're going to come on up and maybe even break out to some new highs here in the QQQ. But if the bears were to push back, you can see that possibility failing this little bit of price support right there, a little tiny bit of price support right there. Failing that could actually push us back down toward the lows of yesterday, whipsawing yesterday's move. So be careful. And that'd be kind of a mean thing to do here, because I'm sure a lot of folks rushed in yesterday to buy. We're going much higher here. And that would be a really mean thing to do to completely reverse that. But you can't rule that out just simply because of the uncertainty in the market ahead on some of the economic data. And then, of course, the beginning of earnings. Let's take a look at our IWM. IWM also had a good day, surging back up. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to really be all that impressive. We ran up into the downtrend area here. This was that break of that downtrend. We broke and we held it as support, and I turned that green. If this follows through to the downside today, I might have to flip that back to red, because if we use this as resistance, well, I see that potential in here that this could be just a little mini head and shoulders pattern that could be setting up. So watch that carefully. Now, a failure here wouldn't necessarily be critical, because we may just be coming back to this longer trend in the chart. So come back into here. I don't think that's a major problem. It will be a little bit painful initially if we break this low, if the bears are able to push through there. Then it might be a little bit painful, because we're looking at maybe a pretty substantial point move on the chart. If the bulls reject this pushback here this morning like we did yesterday and reverse back up, then look for a break of that resistance area in the chart. And if that breaks, probably a move back up into this area of the chart where we've got that little bit of price congestion up in, I didn't draw that line very straight, be closer up in here someplace, and then the resistance of the chart that goes all the way back over here, finding some of these resistance levels in that chart. So watch those levels there if we can push on through. Remember, IWM's got a long ways to go before we get a full-on breakout here in the Russell. So could be giving us a little bit of a clue here. We'll have to wait and see if we get any follow through. Let's take a look at our VIX. Our VIX ended up pulling back. We broke down through this little support area of the chart. But what we didn't do is we didn't really change anything here in that trend. Our trend remains up. If those bears do follow through today on this move, then we could find some support in here and then bounce this back up. So watch that carefully here. If those bears are going to be active this morning, we'll have to wait and see. And if the bulls reject that initial bearish move that we're seeing here in the pre-market, reject it, then there's every reason to believe that we would push right on down through this downtrend and come back down, test some of these support levels. And these are pretty complacent levels considering the things that we have ahead of us, but watch that closely for that potential. If we take a look at our T20s, T2122, which is the 4-week new high, new low ratio, we zoomed right back up through that 50% area here in the chart, stretching back up with that zooming move. And Big Tech did a whole lot of that lifting yesterday. Big Tech being a massive weighting in all three of the major indexes here. Was a big part of that move. So we'll want to watch that carefully. If they can continue to surge here today, well, we could be right back up here in that bearish reversal zone pretty quickly on T2122. However, if those bears pushing today happen to have anything to say or find any inspiration, then we have opened a little bit bigger opportunity for a downside move as well. So we'll want to keep an eye on that. Remember, T2122 doesn't tell us which way the market's going to go. It just gives us that very clear picture of those pressure points in the market and when we should be thinking about lightening up on long positions or picking up on short positions and vice versa. So watch that carefully. If we take a look at our T2108, which is the percentage of stocks above the 40-day moving average, we did push back up here. We held a little bit of price support, bounce back up. You will want to notice that we have broken this trend and we are seeing a little bit of resistance coming into play, but we're also seeing some support areas come into play here in the markets. As we bounce back up, if the bulls can continue to push that move, just kind of remember that T2108 is very extended. We could push right back up here in this area, but notice that we can rarely get past that area. So watch that carefully. If we bounce back up in here, we may not have all that much upside opportunity left in T2108. And if the bears were to find inspiration, well, just keep in mind that we still have substantial downside opportunity if the bears decide to get active here. And lately, they just haven't had any energy to do anything. So it's going to take some inspiration for the bears to actually have much energy going, and we may have to wait for some data for that to occur. If we look at our T2107, the percentage of stocks above the 200-day moving average, also up here in this very, very frothy area. Little pullback to support and bounce in there. Just keeping in mind that if we continue to push, we've got some resistance levels up here to the upside. So watch that closely. We did fracture this trend here just ever so slightly, but we could push right back into that. There's no reason to believe we couldn't. And if the bears were to continue pressing here today, what they're doing in the pre-market, then that pushback could push us down into some areas of price support here in the chart and possibly even lower into some price support levels of T2107. Let's take a look at our T2101, which is our market breadth, absolute breadth index. And you can see yesterday even though we had that surge in buying, the volume was relatively low on that move. We didn't see any breadth increase when the bears were in control first thing in the morning yesterday, and we didn't see any breadth increase as the buyers took over and surged back to the upside. So our breadth did decline yesterday. We'll want to watch that carefully. If we follow through on that decline here, that could be a little bit of a problem for us. It would be even more of a problem for us if the bears taking over this morning actually show some grit at all, and we start to see that breadth increase on a sell wave. That would be a little bit on the negative side for those bulls. So watch that carefully. Don't know that's going to be the case. Don't know anything about what the future is going to hold, but I'm just trying to lay out the possibilities there. We'll want to watch that closely. It's not good to continue to rally on declining breadth. And one of the reasons breadth is likely declining, once again, is that blackout period. Just that major blackout period where corporate buybacks are not allowed as we move into those earnings reports. So just kind of keep that in mind. If we take a look at our economic calendar here for today, our economic calendar is another pretty light day with not much going on in here. We've got an NFIB small business optimism report, unlikely to move the market at all. Let's take a look at it. It has already came out at 91.9, so just a little bit better than consensus of 90.6, and that is an improvement. So business optimism picking up just a little bit here in the market. And then if we take a look, our consensus of international trading goods is expecting a negative 64.8 billion, a little bit worse than the prior. So watch that. And that's really the only things that we largely ignore that anyway. So there's not a lot here for the market to grab a hold of. We do have a bar speaking here at noon. We'll want to be watching for that. And then we've got a 3-month note auction going off. Looking into Wednesday, really not much different. We're going to have mortgage applications, wholesale inventories, the petroleum status number, a couple of other bond auctions, and then of course Williams is speaking as well. So a little bit more Fed speak in there. And all of this is just going to culminate in the hurry up and wait for that CPI number to see how that comes out here this month. Do we see a decline? Do we see it hold fast? Do we see it go up? Your guess is as good as mine. Watch that pretty carefully. However, the market does seem very convinced that we're going to see several rate cuts next year. In fact, the Fed Fund futures suggesting 6 rate cuts next year. We're not hearing those kind of things from the Fed, but the market is pretty convinced that they're right on this. And well, tomorrow we'll find out if that is true or not. We'll want to watch carefully. Well, excuse me, on Thursday. So watch carefully for that. Let's take a look at our earnings calendar here for today. And our earnings calendar does have more notables here today to be paying attention to. I'll run through these quickly. And remember, if you want to grab the list of notables, all you have to do is click the link just below the title of the video. That'll take you back to the morning blog. And on the morning blog, you'll always be able to see those notable reports. AYI is a notable for today. Keep an eye on that one. ACI we'll want to be paying attention to. AZZ will be one for the list today. Oops, NEOG. You'll want to be watching NEOG today. A beautiful little potential bullish setup there. Price Mart, also nice little bullish setup here for a potential trade. Watch that one as it reports today. SGH, we're going to hear from SNX. Nice little bullish setup there. We're going to hear from Telray today. Could be setting up long. And last but not least, we've got WD-40 that we'll be reporting today. So nice bullish move there heading into that earnings report today. So watch that carefully. Been in a beautiful upside trend. So with that, how about we take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, guys, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, please click that subscribe button on YouTube and click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you can also help me out by clicking on that thumbs up button and leaving a brief comment, that helps the channel a lot, and I do truly appreciate it for those that take the time to do that. You know, it does take quite a little bit of time to put all this together and put out a video every market day. So I do appreciate the kindness and support that all you show me for the effort of doing that. It does mean a lot to me. So thank you so much. Let's take a look at some of these charts, and remember, guys, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to be very careful here as we are in that hurry up and wait mode for the market. But there are also a lot of bullish signals out there to be paying attention to, and maybe in some places that you would find a little bit surprising. So we'll look at those. Just remember, guys, these are not any kind of recommendation. You have to make sure and follow your own trade rules. You've got to follow your risk tolerances. Never ever blindly follow anyone else's trade ideas. Let's take a look at a few of those. First off, I want to mention what we saw yesterday in the dollar. Our dollar ended up trading in here pretty flat yesterday, which was interesting because we saw a pretty big whip in some of the bonds. TLT really surged up yesterday and then started to soften by the end of the day, and now we're seeing a little bit of a reversal here on TLT this morning. So we'll want to be keeping an eye on some of these bond yields. They're pretty sensitive right now, and they're whipping around quite a bit. And we'll also want to be keeping an eye on that dollar strength, where that's actually going to go. Could give us some substantial clues. So watch that carefully here on something like TLT. But let's take a look at what happened in that defensive sector. As you guys remember, I talked about a few defensive sector stocks yesterday pushing up. Take a look at Hershey. Hershey trying to break through this downtrend here, trying to hold a higher low. Now, Hershey has a little bit of a challenge yet. It's trying to hold that 50-day moving average, a nice bullish engulfing candle. So I would keep a close eye on this. Now, we may have to rest a little bit longer in here. I would not be surprised if we do, but watch for that next opportunity for that to find some bullish move in there to push on up. And you can really relate to that when you can start taking a look at stocks like, well, KHC. That's how it started this move here on KHC. We popped up, pulled back, held in that area. As a matter of fact, if I go over here, held right in there on that 50-day moving average and made that run. And since we're talking about KHC, well, how about this breakthrough resistance up here? That nice little resting pullback, and buyers stepping up there, pushing on through to the upside. Keep an eye on KHC. You might want to be taking an eye on stocks like Mondelez. Mondelez resting in here against that support level after breaking through and trying to find some buyers in here, pushing on up. We're seeing a little bit of bearishness there in the pre-market this morning, but as long as we hold this support area in here, there is that opportunity that we could resume this uptrend. And when I say resume uptrend, we broke this trend right in here. We saw that all that volatility show up in here. Then we ended up breaking support. Well, we found this support in here, rallied back up through that resistance, holding up in here, and if this pushes on higher, that's the resumption of the uptrend. So watch that carefully on Mondelez. And there are a lot of these defensive sector stocks showing that bullishness. Take a look at Colgate-Palmolive, holding a nice little support level in here, showing bullishness bullishness in the market. Take a look at Constellation Brands finally breaking through some of this choppy resistance here in the chart, maybe showing us that opportunity that it may be about ready to move on higher here, maybe with a little rest or consolidating pullback, but look for Constellation Brands as a possibility, and there's a lot of these stocks in that sector making that appearance. Other places that are showing some interesting moves, let's take a look at utilities. This is the XLU ETF. Utilities also finding bullishness. Now, what's interesting about this is we saw such a great move in bullishness yesterday, but you wouldn't typically see, if we are all in on bullishness in techs and all the normalized stocks out there, we wouldn't be seeing such a rush into old, boring, dividend-paying type stocks, where the folks are looking for a little bit of safety. Now, what this may mean is that institutions are rotating, the big guys are rotating into more of these safety plays. I can't say that that's true, but this does smack of that with such a big upside move yesterday on relatively low volume, and then seeing old, boring, defensive type companies and utilities and things like that finding buyers in here. There may be a rotation going on here by institutions, so just be aware if these continue to follow on through. And you can go into the this sector on its own and just find all kinds. Look at the beautiful trend here in NRG. So lots of these stocks moving to the upside. If you want the individual play, you could find those with really great dividend yields. EIX has got an 8% dividend yield. Holy cow, right? Moving up in a nice upside trend, looking good. So start watching some of those companies. They are looking pretty good overall. Let's take a look at a couple other old, boring companies. Take a look at Verizon. Verizon showing a bullish pattern here, pushing up through resistance. A little resting pullback coming in here this morning, so be a little bit careful here. We're not finished out here toward the trend. So remember, we want to see stocks that are at support, at or near support, and at or near trend for that next buy signal. Just like we saw over here, we rallied up strongly, pulled back, and we found our way back to this trend, moving on up. So watch that carefully here in Verizon. No rush. Wait for the pattern to develop and show itself. AT&T is also getting a pretty substantial pullback here this morning, but it's been trying to hold this support level here in the chart. So watch that closely. If we do see that defensive sector area or those old boring stocks picking up, there might be an opportunity to pick up in here. Another place that shows a little bit of that defensive nature is moving over into the medical area of the market. Let's take a look at Pfizer. Pfizer has been unloved for a long time here, and all of a sudden Pfizer breaking through, reversing, breaking its downtrend, pushing up here and breaking through some resistance in the chart, holding a higher low. And if you'll notice right in here, we're up here trying to break that 50-day moving average here in the chart. So any rest consolidation in here could set up that opportunity that we'd move on higher. Remember, drug companies have just been, boy, we've hated on them for some time, but we're starting to see some bullishness coming up here. BMY breaking a downtrend. Merck has had a big reversal to the upside, just zooming up here. Any rest or pullback into this support level of the chart may be an interesting opportunity to be watching for. So keep an eye on Merck. We're seeing quite a few of those moving in a big way as well. You can look at stocks like 3M setting up a nice bullish setup here on the chart. Stocks like JCI setting up a beautiful potential upside opportunity. So as I said, there's quite a few of these. Here's another old boring company, International Paper, finding that bullishness, and I really like this on the weekly. That's starting to set up and look really good here for international paper for that very long-term downtrend break and bullishness to the upside. So there are a lot of stocks to be watching and paying attention to if those bulls can continue to follow on through. Just remember, try not to overtrade as we're heading into these big data points. Anything is possible. So be very, very, very careful. Okay, be very, very careful about overtrading this market and then finding yourself, oh my gosh, what comes next? And that's that big CPI report that could create any kind of move. So make sure you plan your trading carefully. So with that, everyone, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. Hope you got something out of this video this morning. I want to wish you all of the best, and I will see you right back here bright and early Wednesday morning. Take care, everyone.